Hello, SebGo here, and welcome to another Lines of Battle video. First of all, I want to thank all these people that has watched my videos and has subscribed to my channel. In this moment the channel is a little bit over 210 subscribers, and my last Lines of Battle video received more than 7k views. I'm really impressed, and I really want to thank you for it. In this video, I'm going to show you one of my battles. In this case, I won this battle, and it was played against the player named Seafood. In this battle, we're going to see stuff like the position of the infantry, the use of cavalry, and we're going to look at the positional pressure. And with that, let's start the battle. Okay, so let's start with the analysis of the terrain. Something to clarify. Before the latest update, the update 1.1, we couldn't see the fog of war for each army in the replay of the battles. While playing the battle, we could see the fog of war, but this problem is now solved with this new update. However, I was cooking this video for a while, so there is no fog of war for this video. Nonetheless, I'm going to explain how the fog of war works, why to take positions in some places that the opponent is not able to see, move my units in order for me to see the places I don't see, and stuff like that. Okay, with that said, now let's look at things in the map. Here, and pretty obvious, we have in the middle the river. Depending on the situation, the river can work as a physical barrier that can avoid charges, because the units that are going to cross it are vulnerable to counter charges and also weak in the shooting. However, these narrow rivers are not that dangerous to cross. Possible strategic locations that are concentrated close to the middle of the map and around the stars to capture are the ones shown here. In this case, they are the trees that can give protection in the attack and in the defense of important zones. And definitely, the hills are going to be super important. First, because there are two hill formations on each side of the river that was mentioned earlier. Second, the hills are really good to hide units and to move units while in cover, avoiding possible damage from artillery that is placed in the other side of the hills. Also, if there was a situation like the one being presented here, the hills work as a good way to lure the opponent units into a near fight. By being at the other side, units are not visible. This can force the attacker units up the hill into a fight in a place that the defender wants or needs to fight. Here, in the pink zone, we have an area that is not visible to the red army. The hills work as a visual barrier, hiding whatever is behind. Because of the fog of war problem told earlier, what we have here is just an approximation of the real fog of war. However, in the battles that are played, we also can't see the fog of war of the opponent. So, one can do this type of mental illustrations in which is supposed that the opponent cannot see. So that's why my horses are placed there. In that place they appear to be hidden. So, because of the altitude, the proximity and unit positioning, in this case can be my horses, it's possible to know if the opponent is watching. In some cases we may not know if our units are indeed hidden. There is the possibility that we don't realize that we're being watched. But it's better to constantly plan and consider these things and move based on the assumptions we make for the situations. And with that, let's start the analysis of tactics and strategy. In this case, we can see that the Red Army has concentrated its forces on the left side of the map. In my case, I concentrated my main army of infantry and artillery on the right side. We basically got divided by the river and selected our own hills on each side. Now, why did I decide to put my star on the right side? This has an important explanation, and it's basically the mobility. If we look at these light infantry units, we can observe that they are advancing in this direction and are using something really important, the road. In my side, the road goes almost parallel to the river, crossing it here. This means that I can move faster if I want to go up or down. In the case of Red Army, there's an interesting road that goes from side to side. In the start, I was already thinking that Red was going to put the star on this side. First, because if we look at this side, we can see that it's the biggest. It's wider. In my side, I'm more compacted because of the river. For me, the important side was the right side in this situation. And obviously, the valuable asset is the road. I will be able to move, occupy zones, and rotate units if I need to move up or down any time. Whenever you play a battle, take it where you want it to go. Use the zones of the map that you consider appropriate, and force your opponent to fight in the places you want to fight, and retreat from the places you don't want and shouldn't fight. To achieve this, in this case, I have two really important things. The first thing, already mentioned, is the road, and the second thing, we already mentioned it earlier too, is the horses. We know that this cavalry is hidden, and there is a trick here. I'm going to use this in the battle, and it's going to work as a surprise tool. But in order for this to work, is when the road enters the scene with the maneuverability. With the mobility I have here, my objective is to take positions up as fast as I can with at least these units. The rest of the units will advance slower and will take positions close to the river. With this, I move the battle into this place and the fight will take place in this direction. The red units are forced to rotate and press more from the side than from the top of the map. With this, I have achieved something really important to do, and is that while they were rotating and pressing, my cavalry, without moving, has already won the flank. So at any moment I can order my cavalry to go for a cavalry charge. The fact that my cavalry is hidden here is a headache for my opponent, because it's not sure if my cavalry is here or maybe it's hiding behind these other hills. There's more stuff I can say here. For example, there's always the possibility to push into the road and get close into the star. Maybe fight for places like these trees that are located here. This would force my opponent to retreat and hold. And with that, I am able to capture the stars that are on the middle. Red maybe thought that my star was going to be on the left side too, because it's the wider area, and that there was going to be a more direct confrontation. Here, Red was probably going to use the power of its artillery to decimate my infantry units. If this was the plan of Seafood, important places for the plan would have been places like these ones. That, in the case of Red, the more we go up, we can see more protection. Also, behind this hill, there's a little space to cover units from artillery fire. This is a plus for Red Army if Seafood wants to take the battle into this place. But precisely because we can see this, they are also the reasons to not move the fight into this side as the commander of the other army, and in this case is my army. However, there's always the option to confront the opponent on a head-on attack and measure the combat ability of the army also with other weapons. In this case, with my composition, I decided to go with the plan. The light infantries here are still moving up, trying to get as up as they can. Take into account that the more I move up, the more I force a red reaction in this side, which means that a combat line is going to be formed here in this direction. And also important things like capturing the star or using the trees that have some houses there for protection in the defense. We can also see that this skirmisher is now retreating. Maybe the idea of the Red Army was to use this skirmisher as an explorer and to see if there were units behind the hills that are down here. In this case, this plan didn't work because I also had some skirmishers pushing into this side. Something important that we have here is that we have two skirmishers in this little forest. This forest gives them protection against cavalry charges and also leaves some pressure on this side. This skirmisher here has the important role of observation. Here, in the top of the highest hill, it basically gives me intel of all my opponent. If my opponent decides to use cavalry to charge, it's probably going to use it into here or into here. If that happens, I must take advantage of my cavalry and get into a direct cavalry combat against the opponent horses in this side, and also use the proximity of my skirmishers to give fire support. However, I must not be hasty in launching the cavalry charge. In this case, the opponent cavalry is close to its infantry units, so if I charge now, it's not going to be easy for me to win this cavalry combat. On the other side, I also had the idea to keep advancing these units, to fight possible hidden units that my opponent left there in the start of the game. Now that I can see that there are no units of my opponent hidden here, I can follow the plan and take these units into frontline combat positions closer to the river. For the moment, all I can do is wait and keep taking positions next to the river to force the fight, and then launch my cavalry charge from the flank. So in this moment we can see that at least 2 hussars are really close to the formations of my hidden cavalry. Another problem is the skirmisher that is moving over this side. It's really close, and it's probably going to find a place in which my horses are hidden. So here I have to choose if I'm going to make the charge or if I'm not going to do it. In this case, these hussar units of my opponent are in cavalry charge range. I can destroy these 2 units. Right now, the distance of my opponent's infantry to its cavalry is considerable, so a cavalry combat here is more than viable. These cuirassiers are probably going to move into this place too. I can attack these units and practically force the rout in just one strike. If I manage to break these 4 horses, I will have secured a great advantage. Another thing we can see is that the artillery here is being pushed at max velocity with horses, and that they are moving in this direction. So it can also be possible to keep on with a massive charge into the artillery and already deactivate these units. We can see that there's a little hole between the 2 groups of infantry units of my opponent. If the charge goes well, there's the possibility to break here and keep going, and with that also distracting the advance of my opponent, buying me more time, so I can advance my other units into the river line. So now what we're going to see is my surprise cavalry attack in the form of a massive cavalry charge coming from the right flank of my opponent and going for the artillery. With that, I'm going to strike first, and it's going to be a hard strike. The cavalry charge was a total success. Moreover, not a single cavalry unit was lost. In the case of my opponent, Seafood lost a considerable amount of cavalry units, being the worst one the cuirassier units. With the charge completed and my horses having now low morale, I pull them back so they can recover. We can see that there are now 3 horses on the rear of my opponent, and during the cavalry charge we could see how the horses get through the lines in this part. If we look at the replay of the cavalry charge, we can see that the infantry units that were on the hill were not well used by Seafood in order to respond to the cavalry charge and stop them. If we now check the battle in the infantry side, we have some interesting stuff to talk about. First of all, one of the most important things we can observe of Red Army formation is that because of the great cavalry charge, a lot of its units were deployed and fell behind here, and are now separated of their main battle formation. We can also think that these units of my army are also separated of their main formation. However, the pressure these units deliver on this upper side of the map will allow me to push, break here, and then go down. And why not? I can also go up into the star of my opponent with some of the units I have here. The skirmishers that help in the cavalry charge are now to retreat into the forest. There they'll have to hold as much as they can in order to distract the units that are right next to them and not letting them get into the main battle. I have infantry superiority, therefore the fewer infantry units my opponent has at the front line, I have better possibilities to destroy these units, and with that I can push and attack better. At this moment my opponent practically has already lost, all thanks to the cavalry charge, and now it's just a matter of the infantry to finish this job, with the liberty that there's now few cavalry of my opponent that can hurt them. On the right flank of the battle, we have just finished defeating the opponent infantry units that were fighting my own. Now these infantry units are trying to retreat, however, because of their morale level, they're just about to collapse. So now I can start moving down and encircle, surround my opponent in the middle part of the battlefield. My opponent, by fighting down, gave me the opportunity to keep using the road and this space to get closer to the HQ star. In this case, the line of infantry I have here has low morale. This cost may be because of direct artillery fire, musket fire, or even some skirmishers. I always retreat these low morale units and replace them with better and higher morale units. With these artillery duels, I've also managed to deorganize and break one unit. Seafood here mainly tried to deliver damage to my infantry. For me, in this case, even though weakening the infantry is important, skirmishers and cannons deliver the damage and are valuable here. Here, with these units that are a bit more into the right flank of the battlefield, I can cross the river and start pushing with my 2 artillery pieces down here, delivering more damage. In the case of my infantry more to the south, first we need to observe that there's a bunch of infantry units of my opponent, 5 in this case, and right now they are fighting 6 of my own infantry units. Before engaging here, I saw the threat of this advance, and making use of my advantage here, the road, I started moving units from up to down. With this artillery piece, I let my opponent units into canister range, delivering devastating damage. In the other side, we can see that my skirmishers couldn't hold any more combat and are just about to lose. However, their work is done. They holded the infantry units, and apparently these artillery too, and distracted them from getting into the main combat zone that was taking place on the river. At this moment, I just decided to use my horses to attack the rear of my opponent in the middle. This because the units here were kind of weak. However, Seafood manages to rotate some of its infantry units to stop this cavalry attack. We have to consider that my cavalry has low stamina at this moment, so my cavalry choke is not good enough. However, this unit rotation allows me to advance my own units without suffering that much of musket fire. These cavalry units here allow me to destroy infantry units with low morale, like maybe this light infantry. With the artillery I have here, I can fire to the first unit that is on the flank, dropping the morale of this unit, and after that use a cavalry charge or maybe an infantry charge to destroy this unit. Because of the proximity of this red artillery, I considered that using my cavalry as the main charge force, not the infantry, was the right thing to do. Okay, so in the turns that are left, we're going to watch how the battle ended, how I use my horses, and how with 2 units I go and try to capture the star of my opponent. And in the end, Sifu surrenders. And with that, the battle ends. Thanks for watching the video and see you next time.